And welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen. We do want to give out our sincerest apologies for the delay, but we do have a solution in place, and we should be good to begin the game at any moment here. If you are just joining us, first of all, welcome to our stream here for the day, and get ready for an epic match. We're about to dive in. It's the World Champions, NIP, going up against G2.
One of our most known organizations in Rainbow Six Siege history, and it has been a tech delay here for a little while, so we'll give you guys the crash course of what we've been discussing on the analyst desk, as well as in between you and I. G2 has not had a great showing so far at the Mexico Major, my friend. The first day, a grueling day for G2. They just seemed completely out of it, whereas Ninjas and Pyjamas, they had a pretty hard-fought game up against Dark Zero, but they're still looking to be in form.
Absolutely the case. Only one game played so far, though, so NIP generally has not been tested as much as some of the other teams. Today is probably going to extend that quite a bit. We'll see how well they fare off some of the biggest and most interesting aspects playing into this game. First one is going to be the map, and we're going into it now, folks. Kafe Dostoyevsky. NIP played this yesterday versus Dark Zero and was just barely able to edge it out with an 8-7 victory going in their favor after going up against some great prowess from the other side. NJR and some others giving some great individual skill, and for the NIP side, struggling a little bit with their entry game, especially inside of the early round there. So we'll see if they can correct that, and more importantly, if G2 is going to be able to abuse that. G2 does not have the greatest map stats coming into this one versus NIP, who has been virtually undefeated for nearly 2 years on this map now.
Yeah, since February of 2020, they have not been defeated on Kafe, and it has not changed, although Dark Zero was very close. Shooting at the moon, landed in the stars kind of deal. But for G2 now, this is the proving grounds today. This is where it starts for this comeback. We don't want to play spoils to you guys about those matches from yesterday, but you guys will have to go back and look into those. But either way, we are going to get the sides flip-flopped really quickly so that everybody is on the proper side that they voted for, and then we will jump right back in. But that gives us some more time to set everything up here, because there is indeed a lot to talk about, especially when it comes to G2. Their younger players currently as well being very, very punished. The first game of the day yesterday, we saw the entire scoreboard of G2 just fall off a cliff. Whereas in the follow-up match, Citizen finally came back to form, but the rest of his team just wasn't there.
Yeah, but that does not leave us in the best of straits to what we expect to get out of this team throughout the rest of the tournament. Keep in mind, again, only 2 single best of ones being played out of a total of 6, so it's still a relatively small sample size to what we are going to be seeing overall from this team, and obviously a little bit of an asterisk on their second game as well, considering some of the tech issues that were going into that one and everything that led up to that. Also, the fact there was a different player filling in, so that might have thrown G2 off a little bit as well. No excuses really for this one, though, except for this bit of a delay actually getting things started, but we're making sure it's all settled before we jump into it, so we don't have any more of that. The biggest problem, like we were talking about earlier for NIP on the other side, like we said, is that entry game in their matchup versus Dark Zero yesterday. Across the overall team, had a total opening win-loss percentage of 4-11, and their primary entry, 0-4.
Yeah, not a good showing. Not a good showing. Pino wasn't even inside of the same lobby. It was very strange and something that we especially do not expect out of him, but Ninjas and Pyjamas were still able to make it out of the thick of it, and that's what the important thing is. On your worst days, if you're still able to win, I mean, what are you going to achieve on your best?
Very, very true. So, once again, folks, we are just waiting to quickly rehost the lobby. This should be a very, very fast process. It looks like we've already got 9 out of 10 players in, and now we've got 10 out of 10, so should be able to hop back into the action very, very quickly here and see which of these 2 teams can carry forward. Will NIP continue to dominate this group? Will G2 continue to falter and nearly push themselves into an elimination position this early on in the event, or will they be able to rebound with what will end up being a genius map pick to counter out the issues from NIP yesterday to finally put them on the board in this group? Let's see, folks, as finally we are going live with the matchup.
This is going to be interesting. As you've been building it up this entire time, Kafe is our battleground between Ninjas and Pyjamas up against G2. Ninjas and Pyjamas going to be starting off with a Monty ban here for the offense. Operator that we haven't been seeing too much of recently, all except for one team, and that team being Cyclops with Anaton.
Going to see Thatcher following that one up. Already banned out in the previous ban phase there, so you guys were probably expecting to see that relatively quickly. Thatcher is still pretty much our mainstay ban for an attacker due to the reasons that we probably explained to death already on the stream.
So many times. But this one's very interesting. I like this from G2. They're going to take away the Vigil, so limit a little bit of that roam potential and make that Mute Mozzie combo not as potent when it comes to that style of play. So getting the last defensive ban in here for Ninjas and Pyjamas. What do they want to take off the board? It's going to be the Mira. Could have been the Valkyrie. victory as well, but instead keep that up. And honestly, I really like that, especially with the Vigil ban coming in. You don't want to take away too many tools from yourself.
The choice to ban out the Vigil, I think, is pretty interesting, too. That was the primary operator for Psycho in yesterday's matchup, and Psycho probably had the best results inside of that operator's playstyle. Still ended up top fragging for the team despite his personal issues on the entry game, so could be a little bit of a target ban towards him there. Definitely something to look into a bit later, though. As we get into the first round, we're going to be starting out with the kitchen service defense for our NIP rosters. They'll be on the defensive side to start things out.
And already starting some fun things here for G2's lineup as well. Citizen on the IQ. This is something that we're used to them bringing for this. Also, Yonka on the Nomad. But finally, Hungry, the one I wanted to talk about, was on the Ying. He's going to 6-pick away, though, and bring in Dokkaebi. But hey, before I say that, he's actually going to change it up once again for us and instead insert Capital. Really like this pickup here.
So we'll see how well the Capcan 6-pick also will work out for the
last
defense,
second there.
Nice little switch up coming in for Psycho and NIP, since he cannot jump onto that Vigil that we were talking about earlier there, as it was his mainstay operator for the defensive side of this map in the matchup versus Dark Zero. So instead, going to try and slow things down with a little bit of some trap play. Will be the only bit of it we get, however, so we'll rely on other forms of utility to mitigate this push. Most notably going to be that clash coming in for Julio there, and we'll see how well they're able to mitigate this. Keep in mind, this is a very expansive map. You don't necessarily always have that choke point playstyle that Clash seems to excel upon when she can just block out one or two of the main avenues of attack. Now, as we get into the late round and there's going to be primary focus on only attacking the first floor, it's going to be a little bit different. She can block access to areas like Freezer, VIP, a couple other positions where she can
kitchen as well.
Where she can play very powerfully
lanes
as well. So we'll see, as she'll need to make it to the late round to be able to find that impact.
Okay, so we're actually going back to some traditional things here. I really like this setup here from Ninjas in Pyjamas. They'll be holding down VIP. Also with the reinforcement on the singular panel on Garage Wall, just so you can't get the long angle down the Freezer hallway. So overall, Ninjas in Pyjamas is going to be holding a lot of that bottom floor, and it makes a lot of sense with the setup that they're going for overall. They want to try and delay them with those Capcan traps upstairs, possibly get some damage off if they can, but it's mostly about slowing them down once they get to site with the smoke and with that clash. Try and set up those other defensive players for victory in their gunfights. But overall, when it comes to the overarching strategy, especially for G2's clear here, this should be fairly straightforward, given that Citizen is indeed on IQ.
Yep, just the usual top-down approach for things here for G2. Not going to waste too much time with trying to take bakery control just as of yet. That's the secondary way you can usually approach the attack on the site, and would go pretty much directly up against what we've got from NIP right now, as they're playing a very horizontal defense, as we were explaining earlier. But regardless, G2 has committed themselves to the third floor. It's already taken full control for themselves, and I believe droned it out as well, and they're working on the second floor as we speak.
Yep. Got to take your time when it comes to a map like this. Check every single corner, because at any moment in time, somebody could just slip through your fingers with a big flank. That's the exact opposite of what G2 is about right now. They'll start to gain control of Train as Virtual begin breaking up the floor with Sledge, but what else exactly would you have there? Maybe Buck, but Sledge just better when it comes down to those vertical angles coming from top down. But either way, though, G2 already handling most of this map, but they still have to get down to the bottom floor here and start getting into Ninjas in Pyjamas faces, which again, it's a pretty good defensive matrix overall. These lanes have been blocked off, and it's going to make it very difficult for G2 to get a frag to start things off. Virtue also took some damage in the process of breaking up the floor from the Nitro Cell, so he's down to about 50 HP.
Air jabs going down for Jonka there to be able to set things up for G2 and make sure they're not going to get wrapped upon by NIP inside of a late round scenario here. Keep in mind, NIP has yet to really throw anything out against the G2 rosters. G2 has had full control over the vertical play up until this point in the round. The Clash, in the meanwhile, just waiting nice and patiently in the corner of Kitchen right there. So we'll see how Julio's going to be able to play that inside of the late round here, as he will be very important for intel as well as trying to stop the default plant avenue, trying to hide that Clash until the very last second, and then add a massive wrinkle to the attack here for G2.
Kind of a callback to something that you, well, some people used to do on Clubhouse, which was inside of rafters, you can actually get up on the bar and then jump up onto that shelf in the corner, and you can just stand up there as Clash and watch the door and feed information. But it doesn't happen very often. It's not that great, but that right there, like it a lot more here for Ninjas in Pyjamas. But right now, timer's getting low, down to 20 seconds, and G2 really lost as to what they're doing. Small bake process going through right now for G2, but flames everywhere. They have to try and push in, and right now, it's going to be right through Prep Kitchen. But Ninjas in Pyjamas are prepared for this. Citizen trying to fly through, but it's going to be Kayak and Jonka to get it done. Julio will get one, but are they going to be able to find the planner? The plant's still going down. It's down to Kamikaze, and he's going to lose his life from Virtue. G2, throw it at the site, and it works out.
Yeah, G2 able to make the best effort there of a final execute after everything was building up. It didn't really seem like they had a lot going for themselves either, but looks like at the end of the day, it was all a very well-planned attempt to completely overwhelm the site after spending a good last two minutes or so there trying to get drone intel for themselves, and then absolutely overwhelming things inside of the site itself. Works out very well. The Clash, unfortunately, not having anywhere near the impact they would have wanted, didn't really block anything at all, to be honest with you.
And then Julio just switches to his gun and dies anyway. So it's like, and honestly, he had to do that in that situation. They'd already lost so many bodies. They needed somebody else to be gun up, and that's just the hand that he was dealt. So Ninjas in Pyjamas going to have to go back to the drawing board, but they're not going to head back to kitchen. They want to go upstairs to bar.
We can see signs there, too, that NIP, by playing the horizontal hold and trying to take that round to its very bitter end and hoping to just completely wipe out G2 on a timer and then being forced into the site, they're aware of the fact that the entry game wasn't so great yesterday, maybe trying to play it back a little bit more. I'm curious to see if that's going to be a continuing trend, especially now that we move to the third floor site where they're going to have that much greater freedom to play aggressively inside of any early round situation here.
I'm just very interested as to how things broke down in the back of site there, because we saw what happened with Prep, and it was really one priority from Ninjas in Pyjamas to make sure that nobody could push that area, but there was just an overflow of people that were coming through that area. It was low timer, and I think that's the reason that both you and I thought, okay, Ninjas in Pyjamas probably win this just off of what is going on with timing. They have to force themselves into site, and usually when you funnel like that, you're going to have a bad time. But that was the exact opposite. In fact, G2 just simply waltz into site on the front end, and we get the last little bit of information of Virtue dropping into Freezer, and that's really about it. It seems like they prioritized Whiskey and were able to slip right into Double Door and start getting some frags on Ninjas in Pyjamas. It just made life very difficult.
Yeah, and it's an insistence from NIP too to try and take some of those fights towards the end that starts collapsing things very, very quickly. NIP never even fully realizing, I think, just how dire the situation was getting, as there was such a little time to actually play into it. We're well into the second round here at this point, however, so let's take a look at what G2 is planning to try and take control of the third floor here. Really just now spawning out, so for the most part, still going to be focusing on drone, as well as the IQ intel they're going to be able to get from the roof. They get a really good picture of what the setup is actually going to look like, and more importantly, their process of elimination for the pieces of utility they're going to need to take care of once they start getting control on the third floor.
So you want to know another fun one about this lineup here for G2?
What's that?
IQ actually gets to see Dokubi's phone calls through the wall. So this is something that is actually pretty insane when it comes down to info gathering that we actually don't see as a combo very often, but this is something that's going to work out for them. So we'll see how this goes for them. Or actually, excuse me, it's when they answer the phone. Let me backtrack that just a tick. But yes, indeed, if you get your phone out to answer it and ignore the call, IQ does indeed get to see you through the wall. So can use that, but it is also obviously useful for getting rid of discs and all of these other things. But the problem right now that everybody knows is that IQ doesn't have any explosive utility. So for all the things that are going to require that, like Evil Eyes, she's going to need some help.
Still does have some breaching charges, but obviously that is the least efficient form of that soft breach utility.
Walk up to the
so,
Evil Eye, just put the breaching charge down next to it.
Definitely not going to be dealing with any actual utility
Guys,
pieces,
please don't
only for
shoot me. I
soft
gotta
breach.
get rid of this.
So Muzi here, as we could see, is still waiting for the aggression to boil itself out from G2 into the windows. This is another very careful, very measured approach from G2. And this is part of what Jesse was talking about. Their attacks definitely not looking so bad. Definitely not telling the whole story of their losses yesterday, as this is looking very solid, very well controlled as well, as they're spending a lot of time planning and very little time executing, because when they do go for it, based on what we saw in the last round anyway, it's all a precision attack.
We'll have to see if this measure twice, cut once offense continues to work. Still Citizen on the IQ that we were talking about earlier. Rocking the G8 as well. Fan favorite weapon when it comes to the game. And oh, Citizen able to catch Psycho on a run out. Psycho not seemingly aware that someone was directly above him. Kamikaze taking a lot of damage. He's going to lose his life on white stairs. Muzi to fall as well, but no. Muzi hops outside. Can he get two? Lights up Citizen, but Citizen's got a hell of a lot more bullets than he does. Citizen trying to figure out exactly what he wants to do, but now Ninjas in Pyjamas light up the scoreboard inside of the site and take down two as well. And it's going to be an even trade. Julio blocking the door into hell. He'll be able to take down one. It's up to Hungry to solve this equation.
This one's a great example of what we were talking about in the pregame. NIP do not give up fighting regardless of the odds that are placed before them. Hungry, though, going to try to go for this 1v2 clutch. Unfortunately, has to try and shoot out all this utility being deployed towards him. And when he finally makes the aggressive play, Julio's ready to immediately shut it down. That second round going to go handily into the control of NIP.
A complete distraction from Muzi there. He just hops outside. He's like, I'm Castle. I have an ump. It's fine if I get traded, whatever. And immediately when that happens, Ninjas in Pyjamas just ramp everything up across the board. And no one on G2 expecting that. Just very precise in the way that they were able to handle that situation. Good stuff for Ninjas in Pyjamas, and that's going to be their first round here, as we'll be headed to Reading Room and Fireplace.
Close exchange so far between both of these teams, that we can see the dominant players, at least as far as NIP is concerned, Julio having a 4-kill streak here so far for himself, only one death on the board. Save from that, though, everything is looking fairly even across our scoreline there based on the first 2 rounds of play. Taking a look at the picks here, things are going to look very much the same for G2. Still have the Dokubi and IQ combo coming into the mix here. Will 6-pick towards an alibi, though, for Psycho, giving him a little bit more creative freedom for his roam game on the inside of this round.
Absolutely. We'll have to see what effectiveness he can pull out of his hat here. As Alibi has had some changes recently that's made it to where she's a little easier to work in. Great operator overall, very fun to play. Love the concept of the Prismas. But the MX4 Storm has actually been one of my favorite guns for some time, especially inside of the SMG category. And they recently gave it a little buff in the likes of giving it a 1.5 times scope. And as you guys know, if there's a 1.5 on a gun, the pros are going to use it because that sight is awesome. So that's exactly why you're going to be seeing a little bit more of that, especially with how, you know, common pre-firing and all that kind of stuff is. With Siege, I mean, guys, you got so many bullets. If you're not shooting when you're going to peek an angle, I mean, what are you doing?
Well, for G2,
I guess you're not hitting a Prisma, probably.
Probably. For G2 here, they're going to have to try and vie for control of that second floor, as that's what they're looking to try and achieve for themselves here. We can see Psycho setting up his matrix of those clones, mainly on the third floor here. Usually, for those that are newer to Siege, doesn't end up being a be-all, end-all piece of utility, just a nice one if an enemy ends up on an off chance making that mistake and shooting those out to give you that greater intel when they're trying to execute, especially if they're trying to play it on repel. Makes it very annoying to try and shoot anything past that without accidentally triggering the ability.
Yeah, it gets very, very annoying. And the other thing about Prismas is this is so cool that it is if you actually change your axis and go like parallel with the window, you can slam it down and get it closer to the window where it's more difficult to shoot the feed out. That's something that's kind of cheeky that you can do with those. So always make sure to be looking into that as well. But either way, we're about 50 seconds in here now, folks, as G2 has started off on Kafe, how any team would. You rappel to the roof and start figuring out what's going on. Citizen's trying to figure out exactly where these Valkyrie cameras are, and I can't exactly blame him because moving forward with those up is very risky.
Already see there's some of the utility inside of the site. I believe an Evil Eye already being dealt with by the G2 attacking squad here. For the most part, though, it looks like most, if not all, of those Valkyrie cams are going to be deployed towards the inside of the building. They're not too keen on trying to get this aggressive intel. Like we said before, NIP's early round kill capability has been a little bit lackluster based on the first match we saw from them yesterday, and based on their playstyle here, it seems to be aligning pretty well with that. They're trying to hold things back until later on in the round when they've got G2 trapped inside of the building, trapped in the middle of an execute, and they really can't escape them any further, hopefully giving them a greater capability to pick up those kills in actuality. Psycho going to rotate down. Could see some possibility for a flank coming up in the late round here as he works his way towards red. But regardless, G2 are going to move in for control, but it's Kamikaze to get the first kill here.
Every time. And actually, that was a hop out of Cocktail. He jumped right out of white and ended up getting that frag. So great stuff there from Kamikaze. Janka trying to prioritize the Cocktail window, but could not get it done. G2, mostly centralized around Cigar Lounge right now, as they drop the rest of their players in. They have a minute as they are going to start up and set up shop here in this area. But the issue is right now, there's a lot of solid positioning still here for Ninjas in Pyjamas, especially with Julio down low. They can play spoils to the situation as G2 start to prioritize Cocktail, pushing forward. Pino going to get lit up pretty heavily as he's down to about 5 HP.
Pino nearly not making it out of there in time. Thankfully, it gets the advance warning on the spray, so at least he's able to start moving towards the hatch. That start saves his own life as he's left with a sliver of HP after he gets down there. Virtue's still trying to chase players down, though, on the top-down angles from that very hatch. So far unsuccessfully, though, as he takes a pump from the M590 and goes down to just over 50 HP himself. With only 25 seconds left, G2 cannot afford to sit back and wait this out, play to just these angles anymore. They need to go for the execute. Unfortunately, they don't start it soon. They're going to be faced with another situation where they just don't have the time to get in.
Unfortunate timing right now, and Pino on low HP will get one. Kayak walking into reading door right now. They need somebody to start planting, and it will indeed be him as he sets down the case. About 50% through that, but now, can it be stopped? Kamikaze has an option, but oh no, we're going into the post plant. All of a sudden, inside of a 3v5 here for G2. You get some picks to start this off, otherwise it's going to be very risky, and they get it done right. Kamikaze goes down, Pino and Muzi both on very low HP, but Muzi with a fantastic position right now inside of pillars. Walking up to reading door, have one on his side. Citizen with one, can he get the second? He can. Muzi trying to get the shots, but they don't land. Kayak makes it out. Now it's down to Pino on such low HP. He'll be able to get one, but the timer dwindling right now. He has 10 seconds to get this done as he hikes up white stairs, but the angle's already too strong. There's no way that Pino gets out of this. G2 go up by one.
This is looking like a 3v5 clutch coming out from G2. Beautiful stuff from them. Obviously, Pino trying to do his best here, but the time is well gone at this point. G2 take the round, steal the round out of the hands of NIP, and now take the lead at 2-1. NIP just seemingly having no idea as to the planting strategy coming out there from G2, and as well at the same time, as they work their way in for the retake, no intel, it seems, onto the post-plant positions that they walk right into multiple members of G2, feeding those kills over.
It just seems like the Valkyrie cameras, especially in the positioning that they had, it just were not working out there. We got to get some of these things fixed up real quick, guys. It's going to be a quick tech thing, so that's going to be it. Do not worry about it. We do not have to go back and work on what we were working on previously. This is an in-game thing. It's going to take like 2 minutes to reset.
Yeah, I can tell you for a fact, it's not the same issue that delayed us before.
Yeah. Do not worry. We promise.
Fingers crossed.
Don't at me, though. At John. At Blue
Should be a quick fix. As we're just working on fixing that little bug real quick, which should just require a player to reboot their client and hop back in-game. So as Stokes said, should just take a moment or two here. But once again, we end up with these super
close
close
happened
battle.
here?
Like, last round,
how do you not deny that, especially with the positioning inside of Laundry? And not only that,
Muzi's position alone.
Really no noise going around the building. Like, no harsh gunfights going on where there's gunfire and all this stuff. Kayak walks in and just starts putting the case down, and nobody stops him. No, you're talking about a 5 versus 3, and on top of that, you also brought Valkyrie, but her cameras were ineffective in their placement. One of them, I know, was inside of Train. The other one, I believe, was inside of a dark spot area or right underneath New Balcony. But either way, they weren't able to get any intel on the situation at all for the plant, as well as the retake. They walk upstairs and waltz right into Citizen with a G8 in open arms.
Yeah, it seems that NIP made two very different mistakes inside of this round. They underestimated the aggressive capability of G2 to actually go for the plant in that late round in the 3v5, but then they overestimated the amount of aggression that G2 would show in the post plant. You could see that with Muzi being over on the whiskey stairs there, going up to the second floor, taking Overwatch over on New Balcony to see if someone would peek. Other players were doing very similar things, expecting G2 to try to get hyper-aggressive to make up the difference in the 3v5. That did not happen, and as a result of that, NIP had to start creeping forward into G2 territory, and as we saw, at least in the case of the upstairs player, fed over a whole load of kills to G2.
Yeah, it just boggles my mind, like you're talking about, that you have a position from Nip on Brown Stairs as well as that position in Laundry, and nobody knows that case is going down at all. It's very, very strange. But either way, though, moving on from that, guys, I think we've harped on Ninjas and Pyjamas enough. It's time to make the adjustments here inside of round 4. They're headed back downstairs. This strategy looking very, very different from the last time. But setup overall, quite similar. The only thing is that they're bringing Legion as well as Ward.
Yeah, Legion hopefully going to be able to slow down the traversal from the vertical side of things. Keep in mind, too, that G2 actually didn't end up using that vertical traversal a whole lot as we got into the late round. They did drop 1 or 2 players down the hatch, but the large majority of the attack ended up switching itself up at the last minute and going in from small and large bakery there. So we'll see if G2 go directly for that this time, considering there is still primarily a horizontal setup coming in from NIP this time.
Most insane thing to me right now is the fact that G2 has been able to catch Ninjas and Pyjamas off guard inside of this pacing. You know, it's been very effective so far, and really, it's kind of made things a touch disjointed for Nip, because they continue to try to achieve these things inside of the round that G2 are very prepared for. They're taking their time. It's just simple brush strokes all the way through this piece of art, and Nip really can't do anything about it in the moment. But again, this could be a big change up here, as they have provided some new operators to us. Doesn't seem like they want to try and prioritize mid-floor. It's going to be, once again, that hold completely horizontally on the basement floor.
And NIP will continue to wait passively as a result of that hold here. G2 once again going for the second floor control and has been able to negotiate it for themselves since there's no resistance from NIP. You can see a few players on NIP just trying to set up these more advanced positions for themselves by clearing out the additional debris still positioned around the map. Muzi dealing with the stuff right by the whiskey stairs as an example of that. But Muzi going to be the one playing on the inside of the whiskey bar itself. I don't know.
That skin is gorgeous. Muzi, unscope, thank you. Oh, dude, that is badass. Yo, which one of you made this? Fantastic. Good stuff, guys. I need that skin in my life. That was so very cool. Either way, though, G2 already getting some headway here as they will begin clearing out the mid-floor. Obviously, Citizen going to be priority on this one as he'll start to try and find these electro claws, that being the biggest deal. We can see one of the angles being reinforced. That's the angle to actually look into reading door, if I remember correctly off the top of my head here. And they also have an electro claw, so that makes it even more difficult for G2 to get the angle that they want. Yes, it's going to be that right there. So that's going to actually assist Julio and make it to where they can't play his door how they want. It makes it a lot safer for him, as well as that impact you can see for that cross there for prep. So they've got a lot of things going on for this setup on the horizontal angles.
Down to the last minute, though, G2 has had essentially an infinite amount of time to try to figure out what the setup looks like for NIP. Certainly has been using their drone game here, and more importantly, has now been losing a large amount of it. They still have 8 drones available for use here for G2, especially with all 5 players still alive for that roster as well. But what exactly have they been able to figure out, considering so few have gone down? Let's hope it's going to be a good amount here. They do see the setup from Kamikaze, so just off of that intel alone, if G2 are smart, they're going to be able to figure out that, yeah, guys, this is the same setup. They're just rerunning it one more time. Let's go for the execute in the same way, although they're going to run into into a few more wrinkles this time, as Virtue is going to be met with a Nitro Cell here. Kayak trying to work his way down to the hatch. We do have a Toxic Bait, but it is not perfect. It's only blocking off the rotate. It does not block off the freezer itself. So, still can hop right in here. Pino looking for the resistance. He should be able to hear the case noise going down around the corner from him, but does he want to get aggressive? No! Completely misses the top-down angle from Hungry, and he just takes him out while Pino's standing still. Another member of NIP falls now as Psycho tries to rotate. Yonka going to be able to find one against Kamikaze as well, and just like round number 1, the entire defensive matrix for NIP downstairs falls apart at the seams as G2 just walks right in after a hatch drop.
They just simply can't kill G2 on the entry. I don't know what else to say. They're losing almost every single gunfight, and this is just very different than the Ninjas in Pyjamas that we're all used to seeing. G2 all of a sudden making some magic happen. Jonka gonna get that kill, and that's huge. G2 jumping ahead again here, and as we would expect, a Ninjas in Pyjamas timeout being called.
Yeah, very much needed one at this point. There's some serious issues going on with NIP because it looks fine from a top-down perspective going up until the execute. NIP have utility in position, although at that time, slightly misplacing the Toxic Bait and whatnot. That's what allowed their first player to go in. But then it's these other players as well, these top-down angles that are not being dealt with or are not being cared for at all, as we saw right there in the case of Pino, just allowing for frags to go off freely in the favor of G2, and seemingly not enough of a response ever showing up for NIP in the late round to make up for that.
No, not at all. And, you can see the stress on Ninjas in Pyjamas' faces right now because they know what's going on. They are getting the opportunity that they need for this setup to work, and it's simply not. And it's not because of something that is just outlandish that G2 is achieving. It's because Ninjas in Pyjamas aren't able to play their game right now. It's a big disconnect between the team. Usually when it comes to Ninjas in Pyjamas, when you start to see the kill feed light up for the opposing squad, it's an immediate fight back. There's always pushback from NIP. There's always refrags happening, and we are seeing none of it.
We've seen it on the round they won, but that's it.
Exactly. It's just, oh man, G2 are just playing hardball with them right now. It's very difficult.
And to be fair, NIP are not being given a lot of opportunities to find G2, especially inside of an early to mid round, that first minute to 2 minutes of it, because G2 are not really being very aggressive.
Protected.
They're just playing so far back. They're holding these angles on rappel. They're making sure if anyone does go in, they've got at least a player, if not 2 or 3, supporting their advances. So in the event that NIP try to get aggressive, there's probably a refrag waiting right around the corner.
What the heck is going to be going on here? Okay, now I'm interested, G2. You've got my attention, Hungry. So we're going to have Gridlock as well as Nomad brought in from G2 here. Citizen still going to be sitting on that IQ. Haven't seen the Dokkaebi come back out just yet, but as you'd expect from Hungry, he's just going to keep the carousel going. Whatever he's feeling or whatever they're feeling as an adjustment that could be a positive for them, they are going to do it, and he does not mind playing it in his latest.
So we'll see how well the Gridlock will pan out for G2. Not an operator we see picked into whole often in the meta.
Especially with a Nomad as well.
Yeah,
that's the other thing.
It's a bit overkill on the anti-roam capability to a certain extent.
It is, but I feel like what's going to happen is probably Hungry's going to prioritize staircases or the opposite way around, and the other one's going to prioritize areas in which Ninjas in Pyjamas can try and push out. For instance, like Pixel or right out the White Hall here. So it's stuff like that where they don't want any pressure to come from Ninjas in Pyjamas, and you're going to be allowed to cut the map how you want to. And if you want to try and move forward, you're risking your life. So
this was the site, if memory serves me correctly, where NIP were able to leverage their only victory so far as well. So this is a good counter coming out from G2. Look at the Overwatch from Hungry! He's absolutely ready for the push from Psycho, as he doesn't even get close to the kill. Hungry nearly drop-shotting Psycho to take him out of the fight.
Dude, lying in wait. Gilly in the mist right there. It walks outside and there's just a prone Gridlock in the middle of the street. And that's the last spot that Psycho thought he was going to have to worry about. He breaks the door and instantaneously sprints outside for his 5th death.
So here we go. You're right already here with the usage of the Gridlock, as we're going to see those track stingers thrown down on the red stairs. To be fair, it can be dealt with relatively easily, as NIP already has a player sitting just under that position, and it's going to be able to shoot those out with relative ease. Not to mention all of this extra utility, the Aruni gates, the castle barricades, still blocking access to the main cigar lobby. There's a lot of work to be done here from G2, but as we've already seen in 3 of these rounds, they've had no trouble working past it.
This has been the best game I've seen from G2 this entire lane
by
so far.
far.
This is so crazy how different this is from yesterday. I'm happy for them, but for Ninjas in Pyjamas, we have got to get something going on here. This is very rough right now, especially for Psycho, like we were talking about previously. 0-5-1 right now, and he's doing everything in his power to make that not be the case, but it continues to persist. assist. So we'll see if he's able to change that up any further. But as G2 start work on Christmas, it seems like Ninjas in Pyjamas want to keep this slow moving. Citizen eviscerates Pino as soon as he walks through Shaiko.
Beautiful stuff right now being played by G2. They are playing chess, Nip is playing checkers, and unfortunately they just cannot find a way to best G2 inside of any of these defensive scenarios. Citizen may yet get himself another opportunity, but it is going to be wasted away. Here's Kamikaze, drops down the cigar hatch instead, and will transition over through white to take up a new position here. Time's getting low though, so G2, this will be the only tense part of the round for them so far, as they'll finally need to start actually moving in, taking that control. But as we can see, they already have intel on some of the setup here, but nice. Not Kamikaze as he finally completes that rotate up towards the top of white, taking down Yonka.
Well, 40 seconds remaining now. G2 have got to get the case down, but they've been in this situation before. It's how does Ninjas in Pyjamas respond? G2 already setting up a lot of this offensive utility to make it difficult to try and push forward, and they're going to continue to do so, prioritizing the white hallway. Muzi, though, trying to play spoils. He'll be downstairs inside of pillars, but he only has the bulletproof camera, so he's just going to have to try and simply shoot through that floor. But Muzi's going to be able to get one. Kayak still sticking to plant on trash right now, and he's going to get away with it. Put us into post plant in the 3v3.
Another situation where NIP get away with a plant here, while enemies on the NIP side of things are incredibly close to the situation. We can see Kamikaze trying to get aggressive back out against that counter plant, but no, he's going to go down pretty much immediately as a result of that. Muzi trying to do the same thing. He succeeds though, taking down Hungry. Now is a chance to retrieve Kamikaze, bringing him up. Both Muzi and Kamikaze are going to be incredibly low after that retrieval. Julio, the only one that's at a real fighting HP here, he's going to have to make up the difference, as he's been trying to do throughout the rest of this match. But keep in mind, time's getting low. Only a few seconds left for them to get onto the case itself. Citizen has the cross. Is he ready for the aggression? As here comes Julio now, rounding the corner, and that's it. Unless someone's on the counter defuse, it doesn't matter. Even if they wipe out G2, the round is theirs yet again. We'll run out of time. The diffuser completes its cycle, and G2 take a 4th round.
This is just impossible right now for Ninjas in Pyjamas. They cannot find an answer anywhere, and you can see the smiles already on the G2 faces. They're pretty happy about the situation that they're in as we're entering the last round of this half. This offense so far has been so strong as Ninjas in Pyjamas can't do anything at all. Even when it comes to their sight play, all of the things that they've attempted to throw at G2, they have an answer for it. Really, the only person that they've been allowed to, affect is whatever's going on the cocktail side. They usually end up getting the frag on the cocktail window player, but that's it. G2 is allowed to walk in, get their plants down, and there's being 0 utility thrown as well as 0 prevention of the plant overall.
We are getting a very, very different picture of G2 here today, and it's one that their fans are certainly going to be proud of. As we see the 6th pick from an interesting operator towards an even more interesting operator. Glaz will be swapped out for a Ying, as Hungry will be changing things up once again for the final round of this half.
Well, Hungry, it's been a while, my friend. It has been a while. The Ying play of Hungry, always a good one to watch, and something that G2 will more than likely be abusing inside of this round when it comes to that execute utility. But as we know from Hungry, he sometimes has some unique ways of getting things done, so we'll have to see what he can achieve with this kit overall. And also, by the way, guys, make sure to go into the Rainbow Six Siege shop and check out all of these esports skins. Specifically for this one, the G2 Vigil skin, one of the coolest masks in the game, but I'll be honest, I'm a little biased. The Jaeger helmet was just a little bit better. Little bit better, but hey, still an awesome setup. And make sure to go check it out for all of the teams, guys. It supports them directly, and you support your favorite players.
Well, let's see here if G2 can continue the cycle, pick up a 5-1 lead on Kafe of all maps here. Keep in mind, NIP have not lost this map in eons in Siege time. This will be the first time in a very long while that they will potentially drop it if G2 continues to dominate, not only for this round, but going into the second half also. Obviously very early days here, so not going to be a whole lot of action. And with G2's play style, we're not going to expect a whole lot of it until the late round anyway. There's a lot of exploration for G2 to do here before they even begin to feel comfortable about moving their way in, because they want to avoid the aggression from NIP we've already seen on one of the previous rounds.
Yeah, still some things, obviously, that Ninjas in Pyjamas can do for this last round, but, I mean, this game overall is already presenting us some pretty interesting storylines. I mean, just to think about Brazil as a whole here and think that Ninjas in Pyjamas could possibly be in not even the top 2 of their own region, where Liquid and Furia are both looking very, very solid. That's just very strange, but finally, an initial pick, but no, not enough bullets to be able to take down Virtue, and he gets immediately traded. Hungry with the assist.
They do have intel on one of the players inside of Freezer too, so they'll be being cognizant of that, make sure there's going to be no additional swings. NIP keeping watch. More than anything, anything on the cigar play. You'll note again, NIP not feeling too keen as they normally do. Oh, this nade! Kamikaze sees it coming, thankfully, so he's going to be able to avoid it. Gets respotted by the drone just before it's going to get eaten up there by the mute jammers. They'll know for a fact he's still maintaining this position. Kamikaze knows there's probably a second nade waiting in someone's arsenal, so he's going to back away just in the event they're getting ready to deploy. If they figured out the Ying as well, that could also be a reason why he started to fall back. They need to avoid these Candelas, as that's going to completely debilitate them as G2 start to work their way into the site.
And Ninjas in Pyjamas try to fight back yet again, but Hungry wins the initial gun duel up against Kamikaze. Things will reach a slower point at the moment as G2 is trying to figure out what the rest of these Ninjas in Pyjamas members are, but it seems like Nip has simply moved around the outside of this top floor. We still have players inside a bathroom like Muzi and Pino currently at the top of White Stairs, fighting back up against Ninjas in Pyjamas. He'll take down Janka as Muzi starting to push into Pixel. He'll have an opportunity here inside of Christmas, but he doesn't want it just yet. Instead, he would rather play his position inside of Bathroom, and you cannot exactly blame him. This is a very solid spot to be holding on to. Citizen, though, wants to see exactly what he can get done here as Muzi moves forward. No drones to assist right now, but does he clear this? Doesn't look like they want to get aggressive just yet. Don't really have an overall picture of what's going on as they enter the last 30.
Ultimately, first time in this half, really, we've seen NIP be able to successfully hold the line. Aggression for Muzi finally is going to bowl out, and it's going to be able to take down Citizen. Hungry down as well, so it's not looking good right now for G2. Kayak going to make an attempt to try and bring Hungry back up, but he's stuck in a corner here. Has to be so careful of the aggression from NIP. The good news is because of all the previous rounds, it has been relatively controlled. No one from NIP actively hunting it down, but never mind. Hungry spotted out just at the corner of Psycho's eyes, takes Kayak down to just the last player standing now. No real time left to make a play regardless. He does have the case in hand, but he's going to walk right into Pino as NIP finally claim a second round at the end of the half.
Yeah, Kayak's just going to go run around, and they're more than likely already talking about their defensive side and what's going to go on. They're like, all right, that one was chalked. It's okay. We're going to switch sides now and see what they can do on their defense. But that half, just so very strange. It feels like the pressure is getting to Ninjas in Pyjamas, constantly getting out-fragged. And, I mean, oh my goodness, kills like this that are just heartbreakers when it comes down to it. Julio able to down sledge, dropping the hatch, but cannot finish the kill. Immediately refragged, already putting G2 ahead, but Ninjas in Pyjamas able to fight back inside of this.
So we'll hope that the solid rebound there on the final round from NIP is going to be enough to start pushing them back into this matchup. A 2-4, even though it comes off of the defensive side, certainly workable, but what were you just trying to highlight there?
Pino's back. Pino's back. He's a top frag right now for Ninjas in Pyjamas. So, you know, getting the ball rolling here, which is a positive thing, because I think a lot of us were like, that's a terrible boon for Ninjas in Pyjamas if Pino is not allowed to do what we're used to for this squad, because he's one of the most influential characters in the entire roster.
So Pino finally making his own impact here. We'll see how that will continue on to the attacking side as he leads the charge for the team right now. Julio doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the inside of the earlier rounds, though, as he was rocketing forward when the team was otherwise struggling to find those rounds versus G2, and was a big proponent of the second round that NIP was able to gain for themselves inside of the first half. Let's see how their attacks are going to fare, though. G2 bringing a fairly straightforward setup to the table here for their first upstairs hold on round number 7.
I feel like you saw the castle and you're like, wait a minute. I like this castle barricade setup, though. They're going to put one downstairs for Red Hallway. I'm assuming that this is also going to get a castle barricade so that they can play inside of Cigar. This deployable shield is going to make that a little bit easier for them as well as you can see the Aruni gate on the other side. So this makes it to where the offense not only has to burn the gate, but they also have to burn the door, all to get him out of that one position that you naturally usually get if teams are playing default.
So with NIP out and about here, let's take a look and see where they're going to try and make their first insertion. And it's on, it's down here towards White Stairs. A Citizen tries to get aggressive against the initial entry from Muzi down at the bottom of these stairs. Nearly pays the price for it as he goes down to under 25 HP. Muzi not too confident to try and swing up and follow that through just as of yet. Obviously the rest of his teammates are well out of position to do anything so aggressively. We can see that now from Julio's perspective as they're still setting up air jabs to try and make their red drop.
Yeah, that's how Kafe works. It's a very long and grueling round when it comes down to it. You have to grind it out and start getting that utility burn set up. That's really what Kafe is about at the end of the day, is how good are you as a team at your utility game? Because if you're bad at utility, this is not the map that you want to be playing. Not in the slightest.
So let's see here once again as NIP tries to line up an opening pick. More than anything right now, possibly against Junka, but Janka as well does have to be cautious. This angle's so precarious for both players. Ultimately serves as a bit of a bait, though, as Janka ends up in a different fight versus Pino as he runs his way upstairs there and steals that away from him. giving NIP the first kill of the round on top of that damage that was already done to Citizen at the beginning. Kayak going to be caught by an air jab. There's no one available to respond to that immediately, though, so we will still be able to make a run back upstairs, and we'll pay the price for it.
Okay, also G2 going to be breaking some things up here. They're going to take down the castle barricade, and, well, that's going to open up some lines of sight for Ninjas in Pyjamas inside of Christmas. But this isn't priority right now for them. They're still trying to figure out what they want to do with this red stairs area. Remember, they do have execute utility lined up for themselves and the likes of Psycho on this Ying, so they still have some opportunity to try and jut forward here, but they're still going to need to at least get some semblance of control on this top floor, because most of it currently is on this mid floor with the rest of Ninjas in Pyjamas working things from the roof.
You can see NIP taking a very similar approach to G2, relying on the drone intel and everything they can build up on the top down, but Candelas are working their way in, flooding out Cigar as well as the main bar here, Cocktail as well. Pino's able to leverage that into his second kill on the round as Kayak goes down. Where's the rest of G2 at, and where's the execute coming in from NIP? That's the question, as everything was thrown out there, but the follow-up is a little bit weak. Julio just starting to work his way in now, but it works. Finds out Hungry around the corner. They're not ready for him. Virtue a little bit different, though, as he's able to find a response against Muzi, but now in a 2v4, G2 have to be careful with every single step they take. Never mind, Citizen jumps out and about, picks up his next one, and as does Virtue as he reignites himself into Cocktail. Pino trying to swing against him. He will succeed for a triple. Gonna have to make it a quad, though, now, as Citizen denies it, but ultimately goes down to Pino as NIP take the opening round of the half.
Now that's the kind of round we expect out of Ninjas in Pyjamas and G2. Gunfights galore across the board and trades absolutely every single time, down to the 1 versus 1, and, well, G2 can't get it done. A swing and a miss from the G2 members, and Ninjas in Pyjamas gets one step closer to bringing this back.
Well, the very same flare there for NIP coming out on their attack. Like we said, not a whole lot of action up until those final few seconds when NIP finally have the full picture on the read and feel comfortable enough to attack, and they just barely have enough player count there to be able to trade their way towards a win when you consider the advantage that they got earlier on in the round as well as the initial pick.
Yeah, I believe as well as what we were talking about with that kind of not mistimed, but just a very strange execute in the way that they did things. You know, I actually kind of like the timing on that. Toss those things in, they get that initial pick, but they're also waiting for their players to move up white stairs and get some pressure on the back end, and they don't want to overextend themselves. And the other thing is that it throws G2 off. All these smokes go down, Candelas go in, somebody dies, and then nobody moves. It's like, okay, are they coming? Like, what's happening? And you start to have people flat-footed, like, well, our player inside of Cigar and the likes of, I believe, Kayak, where, you know, you're just simply holding on to the deployable shield, and you're like, I really don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now. You know, it's one of those moments that really, really throws you for a loop.
It's hard to read a situation like that. Even I got thrown off a little bit by it, I'll admit there, as NIP threw the Candelas in. You said it. We were like, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
No, it's not, apparently. It's a much slower and much more complex process from NIP, but obviously plays heavily into their favor as they still take control, bringing the matchup once again to only a 1-round lead for either team. Twitch coming back into the fold here as well for Psycho, so let's see how this will play out.
You know what, yeah, I finally got it, John. It's just the differences between, like, Gold 1 and Plat 3. That's what it is. You know, like, but either way, though, Valkyrie cameras still outside here for G2, but those are going to be handled pretty easily here from Nip. No IQ needed, but speaking of some interesting utility, Psycho going to be bringing Twitch, an operator that we get to see a little bit more at this tournament with the way that she has been adjusted. The F2 is still a very strong weapon, with the secondary smokes assisting in her lineup as well.
Smokes being very crucial for some teams' attacks because of just these very hard-held defenses that we're seeing, even inside of this matchup so far for both of our teams. There's not too much of a vested interest on trying to immediately take or contest fights against the initial entries coming out from the attackers. So as a result of that, we're going to continue to see NIP try to look for that opening kill in a very, very slow fashion.
Ooh, Muzi ends up getting down, and Jonka going to clean it up with the M590. G2 already jutting ahead here, but some window work here from NIP. Most notably Psycho working the stage window, but this is more than likely G2 just going to be playing patiently. They don't want to try and give this up just yet, as this has already put Nip in a bad spot, as well as you can already see the timer already almost down to 1:30, and Ninjas in Pyjamas haven't been able to push forward just yet, although still have quite a few drones to be able to abuse. Citizen going fishing when it comes to Garage here, but really nothing going on. Psycho's going to be downed as, oh no, he's actually going to be able to get traded out here. I believe somebody hopped outside or maybe ran out Bakery, something along those lines, but either way, Julio will be able to get the kill on Hungry. I don't exactly know where his corpse is, but either way though, he downed Psycho. He'll get picked back up to 20 HP.
Nades good from Pino to deal with utility sitting on the other side of that drone hole here. The rest of the team still trying to build themselves up as well. See what the cross is taking care of, but there wasn't anything there. It's already been dealt with. More likely aiming for a player at this point. Junka was in the area, but obviously just going to drop down the hatch. I don't know if he saw the drone or not. Could lead to his death if he doesn't. And there we go. Julio takes the fight. Junka seemed to be aware of the situation, but still cannot traverse to the next room and get himself to the safety of Train. Psycho possibly going to run into some similar issues here as he's in a fight with Kayak now.
Some damage dealt to them, but from behind, Julio, ice in his veins, taking down yet another G2 member, and he's been the bane of their existence inside of round 8. We'll see if he can possibly get the aces. 2 more members spin around the map. Citizen currently on white stairs, as well as Virtue, I believe over near Library. Virtue be able to finally fire back. Some artillery lands, and it's going to take out Pino, still leaving Julio and Psycho on very low HP.
Virtue with a lineup here against the push coming in from one of the members of NIP. Wants to be so patient about this, though. Just Julio as well would only need 1 or 2 bullets to connect onto him in order to make up the difference and take that player down. The same fate will befall Psycho as well if he's going to get overwhelmed. NIP know this. They're inching their way forward towards the site, but they don't have a lot of time to play around anymore. They need to get on. They need to get on now, and they need to start this plant process. G2, though, shutting it down. No one able to make it forward, and G2 hold on to run the timer down and pick up a round for themselves.
That right there is exactly how Ninjas in Pyjamas' defensive round should have looked in that site. Right there. Right when you have that push coming in from hell or reading door, whatever you guys call it at home, you need to have that aggressive frontal assault back into that. Don't just allow them to take that space and start getting those plants down. G2 handle that situation so very well. And they jump forward yet again here, 5-3.
So G2 continuing to excel here. Trading back and forth as they're running into a couple issues on their defensive side, but that time able to bring it down to the timer and keep the disadvantage in the player count manageable enough for them to still be able to force NIP into a forced play situation out onto the site where ultimately they wouldn't be able to go for a plant.
G2, I don't really know what else to say minus lose first 2 games on day 1, question mark, question mark, question mark, beat world champions next day, prosper. That's about it. I mean, this is just insanity right now. This is, I don't think anybody expected this at all. G2's play yesterday was so disjointed. There was no synergy at all. Lots of picks going down, and they simply could not do anything to try and combat it. Today, this is a refreshed and, simply put, refurbished G2. They seem completely rebuilt. It's like just water off their back, and they moved into the next day.
No surprises here for the setup in G2's kitchen deployment here. As we are going to see the usual rotates as well as utility pieces brought to the table. Hungry obviously trying to assist with denying the top-down clear, and more importantly, denying that hatch utility until NIP are able to come down and clear it out for themselves. The electrical, all that is. For NIP, though, they'll know what to expect here, so we've got them out and about. They're going to be trying to walk in on the roam game here, too, as they're also going to bring a Jackal into the fold on Psycho, which would be a new addition to the team this time.
Really, anything with smokes. That's what we're seeing them prioritize for Psycho's slot. And luckily enough, there's quite a few operators that have those nowadays, so he'll be able to keep that carousel moving inside of his operator list. No way, though. Ninjas in Pyjamas getting to the roof, as we would expect of all of our Kafe teams, to begin clearing things out on this top floor. And they're actually going to have some resistance in the like of, I believe, a singular G2 member.
Lucy just trying to aim a little bit lower there so we can take out that drone. Finally gets the job done. As, that's going to be dealt with, and obviously it was eaten up by the Mozzie. That's the reason why they needed to shoot that one out, as it belonged to the enemy now. Seems they're going to catch this play from G2, though. Another player sitting at the bottom of the stairs, Kayak.
Or Kayak, no!
Kayak! Trying to bait the noise out a little bit here, I think, as he continues to run up and down the steps, praying for an opportunity of someone for NIP pushing him, but yeah, is eventually going to give this one back up. Head back to coat check here as the rest of NIP continue to push through the 3rd floor and work their way down.
It's always scary when you're watching somebody waltz through a handful of angles there, especially on those staircases, because you don't really have an opportunity to fight back. They just see your lower torso and all of a sudden you die, and that's really about it. So either way, though, G2 are going to be able to make it out of that, and some good news for them. We're about halfway through the round here now, though, as Ninjas in Pyjamas are working down through the building. This is going to be a horizontal setup for G2 as well. Ninjas in Pyjamas starting to find some answers to this. It looks like they want to prioritize the freezer hatch, but I believe this was the last grenade out of Pino's hand. Actually, no, only using the initial one, so still some solid things. They want to make sure that things are burned, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Double flash in and a frag grenade, but does it get rid of it? It does not. Where is this Electro Claw at?
Had one in the corner. He's actually getting ready to redeploy it. I'm fairly certain it's behind the hatch itself, like the way that Hungry's looking at it, the furthest back position. I'm fairly certain that's where he threw it. But as we can see, he hasn't even used his second one yet in this situation either. So even if they take that first one down,
he's nothing else either.
Yep, he's going to have to chuck that down. So that's it. He's won this battle. It's going to be a very awkward execute now for Nip, but they're still making progress here. Kayak, who was in that aggressive position towards Kochek before, finally goes down. NIP get their first pick of the round. Lots more work to do, though, and only 40 seconds to get it done.
Well, this is starting to look like the bakery attacks that we saw from G2 that ended up working out against Ninjas in Pyjamas in this exact same position. But just remember, Ninjas in Pyjamas don't have as much access to the map as G2 did. G2 provided a lot of pressure as well as was able to drop down that freezer hatch to continue to fight places like Bunker and things along those lines. So this round's still going to be very difficult as we go into the last 20 seconds. Ninjas in Pyjamas, not very many options here, and they need to get the ball rolling. They started off by taking down Citizen, but Jonka will get the refrag. Muzi hopping into Bakery, but there's a rotation as well as a player sitting right inside of Prep Kitchen. Kamikaze takes down one, but they're simply waiting on the crosses. An easy kill for Virtue. He'll make it double, and that's going to be the round. Can't get it with the pistol, but he can! Pops him right in the head. Julio loses some IQ points, and G2 up on match point.
Man, he was like mid-drop getting that last kill right there. That was some intense stuff. But indeed, waste the time more than anything. The kills are a secondary concern as G2 once again bring NIP down to a point where they just do not have the time necessary to get on, as well as fully explore the setup with their drone game there, as we saw the fatal mistake made at the end, not checking the player inside a Prep Kitchen. He wastes those final few seconds that if that player was not there, NIP probably would have been able to get onto the site and at least start a plant.
All right, so guys, let's talk about some utility usage and why it's so unbelievably important inside of Rainbow Six Siege. So initially there, obviously the holes get made so they can try and take over Freezer Hatch and get things popped. But the mistake that they made is that they initially used Pino's frag grenades and they did not check to make sure an ADS is there. That's obviously the defense knows it's going to be one of the things that you try to do. So there's always a risk of something like that being in the area. And sadly, that's one of the reasons that Ninjas in Pyjamas lost the round. It's as simple as I threw a frag grenade and didn't check for an ADS, and now we can't try and double up on frags to get rid of this. The second frag grenade falls through the shelves, and how fragmentation works in this game is it's random. So most of that fragmentation more than likely hit the metal shelves going up, and it just simply didn't get the Electro Claw. So, you know, obviously with another frag grenade would have had another opportunity, but obviously did not. Ninjas in Pyjamas tried to simply just funnel anywhere that they possibly can. They initially get some frags on the restaurant side, but when it came down to it, that bakery offense did not work at all.
Not much like there was another Electric Claw ready to be thrown out as well.
Yeah,
so.
Hungry's just sitting there like, haha.
He's like, guys, even if you win, you lose. So you might
exactly. Even if you win, you lose.
You might as well just head down to Bakery, boys. Anyway, moving into this next round here, G2 sitting on match point. A surprising turnout inside of this matchup, considering everything we talked about in the pregame, especially considering the fact we went to this map in the first place. Props to the leadership team on G2, though, because this was an ace choice. They locked on to the issues that NIP were having in their game versus Dark Zero yesterday, and they have been able to abuse the heck out of it in this game in order to give them a fairly dominant matchup so far at 6-3.
I mean, I guess you could say that Shoss is a good coach. I mean, only has like 2 hammers and did those back-to-back, and also coached the greatest team that Rainbow Six Siege had ever seen. And, you know, I don't know. He might be a little good at his job.
Just a bit.
Just a bit. But G2, I mean, they have jutted ahead so far. I did not see this happening. I thought if G2 were going to take it, it was going to be either maximum regulation or overtime. And I thought it would be G2 on the back foot that would have to try and come back. We'd have this whole emotional heart-to-heart that the team has to get together and they're going to be victorious. But instead, they're stomping. It's looking really good.
Very slow process once again here on what could be our final round for NIP. Kayak wanting to duel out against that, although to be fair, hasn't been too successful in this avenue so far. This is one area where NIP has been able to do a little bit better on their attacks, is either pushing back or outright eliminating the more aggressive of the G2 players inside of the early round situation. Kayak, for instance, on the Maestro in the last round is a good example of that. Regardless, though, NIP are moving forward despite the bits of aggression coming out from Pixel there from Kayak. We're also going to start to see some more of it deploy, though, specifically on the red stairs here as Virtue going for a little bit of a tricky rotate.
Well, Ninjas in Pyjamas, not want to overstep here and lose anybody. All of these risks, and that G2 can possibly take this map, and that's the exact opposite of what they want. Overtime, hopefully in the cards for them, is what they're thinking. Already prioritizing this top floor as they'll begin things inside of Christmas. The setup overall for G2 looking quite strong, mostly around Stacks area, but no ADS there. Ends up getting down Jonka, a nice frag grenade, but still the bathroom position being occupied from the mute of Hungry.
can see their great teamwork between both the player on Repel and on the White Window, trying to take down the earlier members of G2, the more out and about members of G2. They continue that as well. Now that Muzi starts to get aggressive from Zagar, who's been maintaining this position for a long portion of this round, he's able to find Hungry. Citizen finally fires back, but nearly loses his own life in the process. Under 25 HP now as he takes down Pino and brings us into a 4v3. The rest of G2 also restricted down onto the second floor in a very big way also, so NIP should be relatively clear to go for a plant themselves, but quite a few of their members still need to get into the building, and that accounts for some of the angles that G2 have set up to counter this right now. You can see that repel for Virtue. Kayak finally getting into position to find something here as well. Catches Julio with his pants down, and now Virtue gonna look for another one, but no, he can't make those shots land. Psycho successfully hops in. The plant more than likely will go down. Citizen tries to deny, but he gets denied himself. Into a down state there as Kayak comes back into the fight, but he's also immediately traded up by Muzi. Virtue trying to make this happen alone as he brings it into a 1v1 here now, trying to bring it back for his team and trying to end the game here and now. He might actually be able to reconvert this into a 1v2 as well. Gonna try and go for the res. He's gotta be so cautious though. Kamikaze sits right around the corner. Can he deny this res? It's not looking like it. Citizen, oh no, never mind. Virtue hasn't even started it yet. Here comes the attempt now. That'll bring him back up. About 13 seconds now for G2 to take this player out and get back onto him, but Kamikaze's holding. He takes down Citizen. Virtue is all that is left, but Kamikaze can just play this for time at this point. Sees he's running in. Virtue goes around the corner, but Kamikaze gets the better of it, and NIP's hold on.
It's all those little intricate details, John, down to the 1 versus 1 Kamikaze fighting for his and Ninjas in Pyjamas' life. Comes down to the prone in order to win out the situation. Fantastic from Ninjas in Pyjamas, prioritizing that plant inside of Cocktail and locking it out. Although an amazing attempt from G2 to try and bring that back as well. That's going to propel us forward through this game. And while G2 are going to switch things up here, they do not want to go back to the top floor. Instead, they're going to Reading Room Fireplace. They're going to be providing some new utility as well. Virtue back onto the Mozzie here. And by the way, he's been having a heck of a game. Perfect timing as well as the scoreboard comes up here. 11-7-2. And this is something that we haven't seen from him throughout the tournament just yet.
Definitely seeing quite a few of the members of G2 step up their individual performances in a huge way. It's no longer just the Citizen show and him trying to bring the rest of the team with him. Everybody else picking up the slack here now. Kayak even in the midst of that last round there, finding some great prowess to be able to try and punish NIP. Unfortunately, not enough though. NIP survive and push themselves one round closer towards an overtime. First of 3 that they'll need to get though. So let's see if number 2 will be in the cards for them. So we got another second floor defense coming up here from G2.
We're also going to see some things here from Ninjas in Pyjamas. Psycho's still going to be staying on the Jackal. And honestly, I like the pick a lot more. I don't think the Twitch was getting that much traction overall. Really didn't see anything from the Twitch drones, as well as the smokes just really weren't doing anything for them anyways. Jackal obviously providing a little bit more utility when it comes down to searching for these G2 members. Those Twitch drones can get rid of a few things, but they're not as potent as they once were, especially with things like Mozzie and Mute on the field.
Speaking of things being on the field, NIP spawned out and about G2 with a lot of heavy resistance, especially in the form of the Aruni gates, as well as some other trap utility going down up on the 3rd floor there to try and slow down the initial clear from NIP. Very much in the same way that G2 were taking that slow approach on their attacking side. They want to force that playstyle out of NIP to make them struggle, make them only play for the late round, and now in this situation, make them play with a player deficit. Hungry finds the opening pick, this time out the 3rd floor window down on the Psycho in order to give G2 that early advantage.
That's so perfect. The thing here is that Psycho has been prioritizing this window every single time on Ninjas in Pyjamas offenses, and that's something that Hungry saw, and he saw right through it. He's like, okay, when it matters, I'm going to go down to Garage and kill him, and he did it right now. Perfect timing for him, and now Ninjas in Pyjamas have to try and fight off the back foot. Kamikaze's going to start to try and get some Christmas control. Did they eat this up? Oh, looks like the hologram's not exactly going to work out. Oh, and they know the Junk is playing close. Hungry with 2 now, make it a double. It's going to be trouble now for Ninjas in Pyjamas as Kamikaze falls, and so does Pino. Virtue with one of his own, and oh my, it's going so very wrong right now.
NIP tried to bring aggression to the table on this round, but it continues to fail them at every single avenue. Muzi, the only one that can get anything done, and he's instantly traded out as G2 take control of the map, take control of the matchup with a final score of 7-4.
Ladies and gentlemen, G2 take away Kafe from Ninjas in Pyjamas, who has not lost this map since February of 2020. That was all the way back at SI 2020. That is so incredibly long ago. Everyone, including us, also thought this was a very silly choice for G2, but they prove us wrong.
They prove us wrong in a very big way. Massive props to G2. This was not only a big win for their stats, but it's a huge moral victory too. Things were feeling rough for this team after going down with both losses yesterday. They were nearly already facing elimination with today's loss if they lost this game right here, but they rebounded probably the strongest performance, the strongest turnaround we've seen yet of the tournament, and now we have to see what is held in the future for G2 here. Will they still be able to battle back after those 2 losses and look for a top 2 position in this group? We'll have to wait and see over the next 2 days.
Yeah, this is like one of those moments where you haven't seen one of your friends like a year and a half and they've been going to the gym and they just look like a completely different person, right? It's like yesterday it's like, oh man, I might have been eating a little bit too much Whataburger or McDonald's, but now, we're working out, we're doing our thing. And you're like, you don't even look like the same guy, man. This is crazy. I'm very, very happy for G2, but hey, we got some people to talk about this matchup on the desk, and I'm sure that they have a lot to say about this one.
I remember I asked the question right before we went to the predictions for this game where I said, is it possible that G2 refreshes their mentality overnight, they come back, and they beat a weakened NIP that almost lost to Dark Zero? And you guys were like, no, especially not on Kafe, Jesse said.
Jacob, don't you hate it when the new guy gets lucky? Don't you hate it?
I got really
He's
lucky.
coming in here to a game he's never worked in before and he gets to boss us around? What is this?
No, it was a good game by G2, though. And as you mentioned, breaking the 1.5-year-long streak of NIP on Kafe. 13 games in a row thrown down the toilet because of G2.
This is a really big deal. Not just because NIP did not look
huge.
like themselves, but it seemed as though there was always another piece of the NIP puzzle that was just out of place again. And G2 suddenly found their form out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's not about like what I said was ridiculous, right? Which is why this is such a hype result.
Yeah.
It's an enormous result because I was intentionally being absurd and just accidentally was right. Sometimes that happens.
Welcome to international competition where literally anything can go wrong for some teams. And yeah, they're still the world champions, but G2 managed to get back into the swing of things in a really nice way. And it was more like everyone was playing together. We actually got to sit in right over here because they're right across from us. I didn't hear any of the same mental yelling or any of the problems
way more
that
together.
came back. Yeah, they were way more calm. So that already is a very good sign.
Yeah.
Very good. You have any thoughts on NIP? Because we were dismissive, reasonably so, about that close game versus Dark Zero, right? And then they ended up kind of not really being in this match for most of it. Like, pretty convincing win overall for G2. And it's scary because that kind of blows the doors of this group wide open. It's really difficult to tell who's going to get out now. G2 needed this regulation win. They needed it, and they got it.
I mean, I think for NIP's problems, I think some of the same things we saw in their last game against Dark Zero came back. They still really struggled to get that advantage, get that opening. And against G2, we didn't talk about it in the prep phase, but that's an area where they do really find success when they can get that opening pick. They have an 83% win rate of winning the round. That's the 3rd best out of all the teams at this event. So that's really been a strong point from G2. And since NIP weren't able to get any of those opening frags, they weren't able to gain that early round advantage, they were struggling a lot in that department. Pino was back. He had a good game, so that was nice to see. But then Julio kind of fell off instead.
It wasn't even Julio. I mean, it was Julio to some extent. On flank watch, I think he still did a good job on attack. But it came down to Psycho overall
That's what I meant.
for me.
Sorry,
yeah,
you're right.
There you go.
Thank you.
That stat line in particular is really concerning. 4 and 10. He played a lot of a Rooney, and he played a lot of. He was roam or roam clear for the entirety of that game. And there were, especially in one case where he decides on, I believe it was a kitchen defense, where he says, I'm going to burst right in through reception, see if I can't get a frag. And that was where we saw Hunger get the drop shot when he was playing Gridlock. It seemed like he mentally was not in this game in any sense. There was a time he fell off the roof and had to be revived. He only had 4 frags overall. There's, like I mentioned, one missing piece to this NIP puzzle so far through both games. It was Pino. He found his form on Buck today. Today it was Psycho instead.
Right, and Psycho's the guy who's supposed to be getting that entry frag, and he went -4 on entry against Dark Zero. 1 in 3 is a bit better here against G2, but I mean, still not good enough for Psycho, the world champion, and this is supposed to be what he does.
Yeah, and in our conversations with NIP coming into the event, they said anything less than first place is a disappointment.
Absolutely.
They said this is the start of the NIP dynasty. And again, 2 games, they're world champions for a reason. They can bounce back from this, absolutely. But you know, it's a regulation loss and then an overtime win leaves them with 2 points in a group that is going to be very competitive.
Yeah, there were some things that from NIP just seemed very questionable overall. Very first round, it's a kitchen defense, and we see a Clash get aggressive rather than just sticking in bunker, which is a very good power spot because you can't force the Clash out. You can't plant there if she's there. Instead, forces from kitchen into wine and pushes down the hallway with about 20 seconds remaining, and there's a pretty easy flank route from right there because she can just get shot in the back. There was the time where Psycho just swung through reception as a Rooney and couldn't find any frags, times where NIP weren't able to get any trades, that they died and then no one else was there for a refrag and any opportunity. There were several rounds like that. The fact that they had a couple of rounds that came down to clutches is also a little bit concerning. The Kamikaze 1v2 Dance of Death back on round 10 is nice, but you can't have many more rounds like that and expect there to be consistent results. So yeah, NIP looked very off today.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about the over-aggression maybe coming in from NIP for a couple times. And we talked in the pre-show about how NIP are really good about timing those swings, right? They're really good at getting those and finding those kills. And I still think they did that. A couple of rounds, there were some really great swings that came out and caught G2 off guard. But they were going for those swings in moments where they really didn't need to. It felt like so many of those defenses, they were in a comfortable 5v5, they had tons of utility on site. G2 had like nothing really to deal with that utility. And still, NIP were like, maybe we should go for a run out. Maybe we should jump out the window. Maybe we should push this guy. And it's like, what? Even if that works, that's still not a great play because you're risking a bad situation when you're already in a good situation.
Well, on the other side is G2, who looked very fundamentally, like mentally disrupted yesterday and slept it off, apparently, because you know, we were joking beforehand that they can't really focus on anti-stratting because they were such a mess in terms of their coordination. Well, they come back today. Citizen puts on a show, is one of the top players in the world, ends up top fragging on this team. So let's talk about Kayak as well, because you brought up Kayak beforehand, and you wanted to guide us through round 3 because you were critical of Kayak's performance yesterday. And so is he doing things a little bit better in this third round?
Totally, yeah. And I wanted to take a look at this one specifically because what I've noticed from Kayak both yesterday and in EUL in general is he's great. He's a great objective player. He'll open the walls, get the plant down, but he really struggles winning those gunfights. As we mentioned, 5% survival rate yesterday was the lowest of anybody that actually played in yesterday's event. But in this one, despite the fact that G2 are going to go down early, it's going to be a 5v3 when this execute happens, Kayak still finds the plant somehow. The positioning is so much better from G2, and then he's able to defend it. So I'm really impressed by how G2 were able to work this map, even though there's a man disadvantage. And I think throughout this round, you've still got to criticize NIP, because as you'll see through their positioning, they're not going to lose a single player until after this plant or during this plant going down, but they're falling off to the basement. They're not coming at these top floors, which may not be the right position here, right? But they're not going for flank up these staircases to try to put pressure on the top floor players. They're not trying to get aggressive against the player planting on the side of Kayak. And there's no plant denial. I mean, all the C4s have been wasted at this point. There are still 2 Toxic Babes, but they're not getting used against Kayak. And so I really do like the way this plant goes down.
Overall, I think G2 and the way that they structured themselves yesterday definitely did look disjointed. I can't use that adjective to describe G2, especially in this case, because it seemed like the shot calling was even though there were some things that G2 were doing on attacks that seemed like it was the same round in and round out, it still very much appeared that it was the same here.
Where's the Toxic Babe? Where's the Toxic Babe?
No, it's simply
right
not there.
Now, Kamikaze.
No,
and now
you're right.
Time's out. You
Kayak
can't do it
gets
anymore.
down. It very much seems as though when they have this position, they just don't really use it the right way. Muzi can swing back in if he feels like it, but he's still doing it late. They've got pings that come down there as well, but he's going to come for this way, way, way too late. And Kayak, I think he recognized it at the last second. But Citizen up here, those 2 frags are so crucial because both Julio and and Psycho would need that frag to clear the mirror back out of position, and then it's all left up to Pino. Kayak does get removed, but still, we're looking at a case where, at least for right now, Pino simply can't recover. It's just too late. Yeah,
the frags upstairs from Citizen are huge because there is a flank up that comes from NIP, but it's late, right? It's not while that plant's going down, it's actively in the post plant, and still Citizen shreds them both. That's something that not everybody's able to do, and it ends in a 1v1 that Citizen, of course, wins based off of the time.
Well, rough stuff, but at least it's encouraging for a lot of G2 fans, and Jess has characterized them as boom or bust. You know, they busted a couple games, but it's a pretty big boom when you go ahead and take out NIP. So that's we'll see if they can maintain that form because it's been a little like Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, G2, I said that they were the worst-looking team throughout all of day 1, and then they beat the world champions. I mean, we very realistically could see this group go without NIP making it out. Like, I think Dark Zero looked favorable to get out at this point. Damwon G2 might be sort of that fight for the second spot. It's early. NIP have only played 2 games. We cannot forget about that. They've got so many more opportunities to get points. But like that's kind of the direction we're seeing, not just based off the results, but also based on just the level of play we're seeing from NIP within these games.
Yeah, and there's a real danger, too, that if they go out in second place, that they end up playing a team like BDS or Liquid in the quarterfinals, which are very losable. From current form, you would think those are very losable games for NIP.
Yeah, it gets tough if you get into that second seed. I mean, better than 3rd or 4th, but it's not an easy competition.
Try to fight your way out of that position if you can. Dark Zero so far have been making a pretty good statement, but again, that is more or less based off them simply having played more games and found more success there. NIP still have both of those games against Damwon Kia that they have to play a little bit later on tonight, so that'll be like the last 2 games that they have to sort through, which means there is a huge time buffer. They've got so many other matches to go back, do a little bit more stratting, figure out where their mental inconsistency is, because I think that played a big factor in this game.
I'm worried about those Damwon Kia games because purely from a mentality standpoint, obviously the expectations are extremely high on NIP and they're not being able to pull it together right now. And I've talked to, the Korean team, and the Damwon Kia guys are in a great position mentally. They're going to feel even better watching G2 beat NIP when they beat G2 yesterday.
Yeah.
And their attitude is they have nothing to lose. Like, they're going to play some, they're going to be loose, you know? And, a team that may be mentally collapsing a bit against a team that should be in a very strong mental position right now, who feels that they are the underdogs and, anything that they do that's good is such a bonus, is dangerous. I think it's a trap game for sure.
Yeah, I think Damwon Kia, out of anybody, probably were the least expected to make it to this major. I mean, they weren't known at all on the international stage. They just make it into the APAC playoffs, and then they dominate. They don't drop a single map throughout the APAC playoffs, and it did feel like, we're just happy to be here. Where they're here in Mexico. They've never made it to an international major before, and now they're beating G2. You could see it on Twitter, ran after the fact, just celebrating that, and the vibes were at an all-time high.
Funny part about this is, as much as NIP have talked about this wanting to be the start of their dynasty, so to speak, all of a sudden the team that could potentially kill that dynasty is Damwon Kia. I didn't see this narrative or this storyline showing up in the slightest, but if anyone could potentially knock NIP out, that is the worst team that you can lose to if you're New Zealand Pyjamas.
You get a Kingslayer rep forever after that one. That's wonderful.
Even if you do nothing else in the scope of APAC North or internationally for a long time, you will be the team that stopped the NIP pain train before it even had the chance to get going.
I mean, the start of Korean dominance, it would be appropriate if it was me here to preside over that. So we won't get ahead of ourselves.
Face it, blame this man.
Let's look at round 7 as well, because at least for NIP, Pino, like you mentioned, was playing a lot better today. He was on the buck a lot of the time. Why did you like what Pino was showing in this round?
Because this kind of seemed like where NIP was about to bring things back. They were able to bounce off of the Ying play a little bit. That's already going to disrupt what G2 brings in this round. But this is already Pino's second kill on the buck. He had another one downstairs before this round had the chance to get going. So now Julio wants the cross, but everyone else on NIP has already begun to swarm back up to the bomb site. It's the only kill that happens in this round that doesn't come from Pino, but Citizen and Virtue have to clutch up this round, and both of them are holding some relative power positions, but Virtue has to make a rotate back down. Once Citizen evens up the odds a little bit more, Virtue then moves back away from the hatch. Pino does what he does best, like we mentioned, and he swings. This is what he does probably better than most anyone else on his team. Both of the kills on G2 in those last couple of seconds came when both members of G2 simply weren't expecting it, and they have to hide back and make sure that they don't die. Their entire priority is stay alive for the rest of the round. Pino makes sure it doesn't happen. That is how Pino should be playing.
And that was a cigar hold too from G2. This is really popular in Europe. They like to extend into cigar, have this really fortified position with castle gate, barricades, Surya gates, and usually it's really difficult to try to clear that from piano as well as red stairs. And they just threw candelas down the skylight. What? That's not how you're supposed to counter that strat. I've never seen that before, but it worked beautifully. And then the buck coming up from below, really fantastic stuff. And very creative answer to one of Europe's newest and most dominant strategies.
Unfortunately, that was one of the only good things that NIP, I think, were able to bring out in this game. You can look through all the rounds that NIP won and find the exact reason for why they did it every time. But if you look for the reasons for why NIP lost a couple of those pivotal rounds to getting over-aggressive and, we'll stop using the buzzword, overzealous, shall we say, in this game, then the reasons they fell apart are pretty obvious.
Do you have renewed hope in G2 to get out of groups, or is this just thoroughly disappointing from NIP?
I'd say it's a combination of both, but not so much that it has to be one or the other as far as I'm concerned. Yes, NIP do look very
I'm sorry,
mentally...
you must engage in my false dichotomy, sir.
Must I? Do I have to?
No, continue.
It's a mental problem from NIP. After the way that their first game went, I think it was probably a little bit shaky. I think they were happy to like escape with a win against Dark Zero. You can't really find like the silver lining of a similar type in a game like this where it was that detrimental to like their mental state overall. G2 had a crazy bounce back and played far more structured, far more together. The IGL shot calling from Kayak seemed like it was on point. They didn't have to use attack timeout. NIP for all intents and purposes, look like if they keep playing like that, they will fall apart pretty quick.
Yeah, I think in terms of the standings for Group C, like I don't expect G2 to take out Dark Zero. I don't expect them to surpass DZ. I think NIP will come back to form. I think NIP will get some more points as the days go on. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe this is the time when NIP fall flat on their face. But
2-0 Damwon Kia.
That's the thing then, right? I mean, maybe it'll come down to Damwon versus G2, Damwon Kia, and I mean, Damwon Kia already won that game, right? That's been settled already. We know who the better team is.
But they gotta play again. They gotta play.
Yeah. We'll see that
Double
one.
round robin format, baby. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see. All right, we will have more NIP later on today as they look to defend their title from the 6 Invitational. But we've got a treat here, at least on the main stage, because we have yet to see Space Station Gaming or Na'Vi, and that's going to be coming up after the break.